me again. We're going to put a pause on what we've been doing here. I haven't fully decided on the color of the cage. I think I'm going to go with the same blue as last time. I haven't bought it yet. I'll put a picture in here. We've locked the rust in, that's fine. We've assembled the rear end apart from the brakes, and I've got modifications to do to the brakes. I've got plans for that which require a bit of math, and I couldn't be bothered doing that, so I've been putting it off. But we can start on front end final assembly, and there's a little bit of work to go on here, which is one of the reasons I haven't put all this back together yet. And we're going to get onto that today. I'm going to do a tutorial video on this sort of as best I can, because I get asked quite a bit what's involved in these. There's not a heck of a lot of information out there, although there's enough guys that have put these things in. So what this is a Satchell Engineering SatchShift kit for the 206, specifically for the BE4 transmission, although I believe it fits the BE3 as well. If you've been watching the channel, and you should, if you haven't, I'm very disappointed in you, and you should be punished. You've seen me pull this apart before. So this is the standard shifter for the BE4. The shift knob itself is a nice weighted aluminium piece, but it's all one piece with the boot, and the plastic that binds it over the years has deteriorated, fallen apart. I've only ever seen one intact one, and it was about to go. And then once they've broken, it's a press fit onto this like condomy thing, and trying to get a replacement is just a nightmare. Your best bet, if you're in that predicament, would probably be to thread this rod. I think it's 10 mil. You could probably put a 10 mil thread on it and get a screw-on adapter or a screw-on shifter, because the ones with the grub screws that go on here, I've never seen them work. Apart from that, this part is actually quite good. It's got a nice spherical bearing in there, and solid metal heims in the bottom. This end, however, is subject to a lot of heat cycles, a lot of bang shifts, and it's plastic and rubber. And if you can see how much play is in that, like it's horrible. Cables don't offer the best feel as it is. Combined with that, it's like trying to shift gears by, I don't know, grabbing the head of a duck and trying to push it into a tube. I don't know. Metaphors aren't my thing, but that's going in the bin. Satchell Engineering have come up with a linkage system. Now it changes the position of the shift knob, obviously, makes it better for racing. Also changes the pivot points for the shifter, making it into a short shifter. And it's all heim joints, solid rod ends, and bearings everywhere. These are serviceable as well, they're greasable, and obviously replaceable. And everything's fully adjustable, which means you've got a bit of play in fitting this, but there is quite a bit of work to get it to fit, and that's what we're going to get started on today. Funnily enough, the first instruction in here is to cut out the paper template and use that to mark the hole. And I've gone through this several times and not found a template, so that's going to be my first hurdle. Once I source that, I'll jack the car up and we'll see what's involved in fitting this. Now, obviously I don't have the heat shield or the exhaust in my car. If you're doing this to a road car, you're gonna have to drop those things. I would probably also suggest taking the center console and everything around there out. Otherwise you might drill into something that you love. But anyway, let's do it. All right, we are under the car, and to get the camera far enough back that you can actually see with a bit of perspective, I can't see the viewfinder, so if anything's out of frame, I apologise, but it probably is going to be. So to get you guys in perspective, that's the engine there in the front of the car, subframe, exhaust out the back of the car, and we're looking at it from this side, so you're sort of kind of looking at it from, I guess, the driver's side. What is the driver's side in Australia? Now I've got this decap pipe in here, and the factory shifters are fitted, so I'm going to have to get those out of the way, obviously, because it looks to me like the hole is drilled about there somewhere by the literature. Now there's not a lot of space between there and the subframe. I mean, there is, but like a drill with a hole saw on it is quite long, so I'm going to have to try and clear out as much from this area as possible. So if your car is factory, you're going to have a big catalytic converter here,
and some heat shields on that. You're not going to be able to see any of this. So drop the exhaust there. Now you've seen me do that before. And then all these little studs around the place all have a 10mm nut on them. Undo those. The heat shield will then sort of drop down and slide out the back, and you'll see this. Then you'll need to get the catalytic converter out, so you've got the two O2 sensors. If you undo those, just be careful, don't bump them and don't get them wet. They're quite sensitive and quite a pain to change. Otherwise, the plugs sit up on top of the transmission. There's a big blue and green plug up there. You can undo them, and then they're clipped on with these things all the way along. You've just got to undo those and take the whole lot out as one. The bolt on this pipe is that fella there, which you've got the light on it there. He's a bit of a pain. You've got to undo that, and then you've got that circle bracket, same as this one here. You've got to spread it and get this fella out. You know, it's easier than doing the manifold, but it's still not easy. And then you can either undo these nuts here and take this out, or I'm probably going to undo these three here and take this plate out as well, just to give me this much more space. And then sway bar you can undo there and leave the end links done up, and it'll just swing down and out of the way, and that should give me all this here open. Hopefully that's enough. If it's not, then the subframe will need to come down, so I'll undo the two steering rack bolts and the 4 subframe bolts around the place, leave the dog bone done up and leave the control arms done up, and it will drop down just a little bit and might give me enough space, but I'm going to leave that for the time being. I'm just going to undo this little plate, all the exhaust, and factory shifter. Now factory shifter, if you've got all your interior in, you can just lift the boot and then carefully slide, pull a knob off of that plastic thing. It just slides off. Just be careful not to break anything, and then you can undo the 4 bolts on this and drop it down. All your center console and everything can stay in the car. You don't need to remove that, but like I said, the hole's being drilled here somewhere, and all your SRS gear is there. Like if you look through that hole there, that's actually the plug for the SRS, that orange plug. So it's all in that area somewhere, so you might want to remove the center console just to make sure that you don't drill anything when you drill that hole. I don't actually know where it is yet. I still don't have the template, so I've emailed Satchell, but I won't hear anything back from them until Monday, which for me is sometime late tonight, which is not good. So I won't know where that hole is until tomorrow, and then I'll need to find someone with a printer, which could take a while, but that's my problem, not yours. So let's do it.
Okay, we're up on top of the engine now, and obviously mine's half pulled apart, but yours would have a battery tray and a battery box, which battery tray and battery box would be sitting in there like that, and then obviously all your intake gear. These have come out pretty simple, so obviously, you know, a couple of bolts, and that battery tray comes out. I've said it before, I'll say it again. They actually reinforced this mount here by bracing this in on the corner. This gearbox mount is held on by those 2 tabs, and then 2 bolts underneath. And yeah, so just that triangulation in there is great. So I'm actually going to put that battery tray back in, or make some sort of other mount, even though it's heavy. I think the bracing that it provides there is worthwhile running it. And then obviously all the intake gear and my secondary air injection is missing as well. So these 2 here are the plugs for the O2 sensors, so I need to undo those to get that other guy out of there. And then this obviously here is all the linkage for the gearbox that we're removing. So it looks to be held onto the transmission with 3 bolts. Undo those, and then that bad boy will pop out of there. We need to just pop these off of these rods gently without breaking them, because they might be worth something to someone. It's a bit dark in there, sorry, but anyway. So I'll get that gear out of the way, and then we'll have a look at drilling this hole. Okay, that is out. That leaves this this fella here and that fella there, which are your two shift forks on the transmission. And basically this is where the instructions take over for the SatchShift. It just says remove the old shifter, which we have done. Now there's plenty of room in there to play. So these are two 13s. There's one there and one there. And then the guy underneath is actually an 11. I don't know if it's factory, I believe it is. And it's quite troublesome. I had to come through underneath with some long extensions to get to him. And he's a long bolt, it just keeps going and going and going. That one there and that one there are actually what attached to the transmission, so they need to be popped off. This one here can stay on, but to get to this fella here, I popped him off, pushed it back, and so I get my socket in there. But these bushings in here actually aren't super sloppy, so this is probably the nicest set of shift cables I've got. So I will put them away because they are worth money, and we'll get on with the instructions on putting this guy in. Okay, Satchell Engineering have emailed through the template that I need. Now I'm a little bit worried about emailing it through because if your print margins are set up differently or it's a different printer or orientation or whatever, this could be scaled differently. Easiest way to tell is to measure the size of the hole compared to the size of the hole that I need. Now it says to drill a 38mm hole, which this one here is exactly 38mm across, but by the plans it looks like that's my orientation hole and that's the one I have to drill, and this one here is well over 50mm. It's 50, like 53 mil. If that's the case, then I'm going to have to scale this differently. However, I've got pictures in the guide, and I'll cut this template out, drop it into where it needs to sit. I believe that's the orientation hole, and that's the one that I need to drill. And then I just need to get my 38mm hole in there. So if that is the case, I need to know the center of this hole, because I'll jump under first and I'll center punch where it needs to be, because your hole saw, obviously the arbor needs to drill first. So I need to know exactly where the center is so I can start with that. So I'll jump under and I'll center punch, and then I'll come back out, cut the template, jump back under, mark the outside, just so I can double check, and then I'll also triple check it via some other means. Now it doesn't seem to be a huge deal how close I am with this hole, because that's essentially the size of the hole there, and it only needs to accommodate this little guy here. And obviously there's, you know, quite a lot of play there, and you know, I kind of feel sorry for this little guy, but you know, I'm sure he loves her. But I want to be centered anyway, because I don't want to be pulling on the side of this and creating extra resistance. I want to try and hit the guts of it. So finding a center of a circle is quite easy. Two ways of doing it depending on your level of accuracy required. First way of doing it is just to draw across the middle. So eyeball center and draw across it. Now you can actually, using a ruler, sort of go over and back until you find the longest possible measurement. So in this case it's 38 mil, as I said, so I'll get it at 38, draw a line, go around here, make sure I'm at 38, draw a line, go around here. And now obviously this isn't, you could be out by quite a lot on here, but the law of averages states if you keep doing it, you know, the center point's going to be apparent. I've only done 3 there and they're already pretty well lined up in the guts. For more accuracy, set your square or get a square. I prefer using this one because it sits flat, as opposed to this one here trying to write on flat paper. This one here lays down nice and flat. So with a square, put one side of the circle here, one side here, make sure they touch on both. And now accuracy is important here because that's what we're going for. So use a nice sharp pencil and draw those lines. The further you draw the lines out, the more room you give yourself for error. So draw that one there and then come around and draw another one. You can either line it up exactly and make a square and then just go across the corners of your square, or you can offset it a little bit. Doesn't make any difference. I find this to be just a little bit easier to slightly offset them instead of making it into a square, because I have screwed up making it into a square before by, I don't know, I guess putting more effort into making it a square and less effort into finding the center. I don't know. But anyway, I need to zero that there and set this to 45 degrees. And then once you square off the outside of a circle like that, any 45 degree line from there is going to be the center of the circle. So you can just do one and it will take you through the middle, but then, you know, finding the point along there where it's actually square is difficult. So do it from two different points where the lines intersect is exactly center. So there and there. So 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, 45 degrees, center of my circle. So I'll jump under the car with my guide, make sure I've got the right size template and make sure it's falling in pretty well the right space for the pictures I've got here. Should be pretty simple. And then we'll drill that hole. I don't know if you think I've got a 38mm, which could be interesting. That is a, don't know. Oh, there we go, 44mm. I'll have a look, make sure I've got a 38mm hole saw. We'll go from there, let's do it. All right, we are back under the car again. Obviously, we've got our template. Now, the template does fit quite nicely over that bump up there. There's a little bump, and it sits quite nicely over that. The hole seems to be the correct size because it fits over it snugly. Now, I'm guessing that you line the bottom edge up with this seam here, which is a little counterintuitive because that puts it sort of off angle in the tunnel. If I can sort of do it here one-handed without being able to see real well. As you can see, it's way over to this side and there's a bigger gap on that side and it's kind of crooked, but it lines up nicely with that and that. And if we have a look at the photos, it looks to be what they're doing in the photos. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see these under here, but like that looks about right. And like if you have a look at, sorry, finger in the shot again, where the hole lines up that they've drawn there, it looks to line up very closely with that seam, which is where mine went. Like the edge of the hole is really close to that seam. So I'm going to go with that and just assume that I am right. The only thing that does kind of worry me is the fact that like that clearly is a much larger hole than that one in the photo, which, you know, that one we've measured at 38mm, this one we measured at 57, and it looks to be like a huge hole, like the one that he's marked there, but then his hole saw covers the whole thing. So I'm assuming that's not a 38mm hole saw, but they're telling me to use a 38mm hole saw. So I don't know. I'm going to go with what they told me to do. Ignore the pictures. So I'm going to center punch this, and judging by the angle, the bottom of the drill is going to want to be like right here on the subframe. So I might be able to get the drill in, but it'll be on a bit of an angle, which means we'll cut through this side first, and this side up here we'll cut through last. Not a big deal because we're not drilling a long hole, so if we're a bit crooked, it doesn't really matter. But what it will do is it will bite. Once it cuts through, it'll be biting up here, and it'll be like trying to smash your fingers into here. So just be really careful once it cuts through. Just go really slowly with it, and then you might have to just get that last little bit. You might have to grab with some pliers and snap that off, and then tidy it up with a drum sander or something. Because yeah, it won't want to cut it. But anyway, let's mark this and do it. All right, so 38mm, I decided to just smash it in there because it's actually like quite a bit of play in there. So I figured if I'm out a little bit, I could move the hole over some. But as you can see, this is the length of the drill with a hole saw on it. It's quite long, but it smashed through pretty easily. Actually, I was able to get pretty decent alignment. Kind of glad I used the nanny drill because it cut out a few times and stopped me from getting my fingers smashed. But anyway, now I've got a massive mess here because I've been dealing in parts again. But anyway, the next step is to put this bad boy here in. So let's do that. Okay, disassembled everything back down to its component parts. And disturbingly enough, this doesn't line up. Don't worry, it's upside down. So I need to line that up with the original holes there. It actually says the original studs, but the studs on these are attached to the big box that goes underneath. So line that up and we'll smash that 12mm hole through the back there. Before I tighten any of that up there, just going to make sure that everything's right. There's a bit of adjustability in that. I couldn't be bothered pulling the studs out of the original shifter, so I just found some other Peugeot bolts that were floating around. And yeah, that guy on the back that I installed there's got up and down adjustment in him. The rod lines up with that hole that I drilled, sorta. It looks like it could be bigger. So first of all, I'm going to put the rubber flange on that guy, and then bolt the other piece on, which sits down the subframe. Now I've got another subframe here just to kind of show you. So this is looking from the front. So the hole we drilled is sort of back here somewhere in the firewall tunnel, and then there's this stud on top here, which you've got your lower dog bone engine mount there. Your steering rack sits in behind here. Your exhaust manifold's pretty well right there. And the other piece bolts into here, which if I go get it, don't even know where it is. Lost it. Great. That piece. I had it right here all along. That piece goes on there. Like that. The complicated looking bit. And then this bolts somewhere under the engine. So you can't actually really even see it from the top here. I believe it's sort of there somewhere. So this could be fun. But anyway, wish me luck. Okay, that was really not fun. I ended up taking this top piece off because all this stuff flopping around was trying to like tip it over. It was really hard to hold on to. You can see just that piece sticking out there is all I bolted on. I've got this set here of Allen keys for a 3/8 ratchet. That is just long enough, like it's sort of sitting in the pipe to there and it's kind of rubbing, so you couldn't get anything smaller or shorter in there. You probably get an Allen key in there, but I couldn't get the ratchet on it. I had to undo the lower engine mount and actually like rock the engine back to be able to get a ratchet in between the manifold and the stud. If you took the manifold off, it'd be a ton easier, but that's a lot of work. So I just held the engine back, did it up. It's still loose because I need to align it. So now I need to put this top piece back on and work out where that bracket goes. It kind of looks like it mounts to the exhaust heat shield, but that sounds kind of weird, but that may be where it is. So I'll put this back on. Okay, that was actually way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. That hole there wasn't too big a deal. That one still got the ratchet in it though. You can see it's so far off angle that trying to drill that was difficult. I even went out to the work unit and got all my like long series drill bits out, which helped. I couldn't get the short drill in there at all. That hole there I could drill with the long series bit. It walked a little, even with a decent center punch. And then the drama is that other hole wanted to land right on a spot well because this piece and this piece actually joined right under there. So I had to move it a little bit. But anyway, and then what I ended up doing was getting a really sharp implement down there, really sharp like an awl, and I just sort of hammered it through both skins and then drilled it through from the inside. It's a little bit out, which is a bit disappointing because it's sort of tweaking that bracket a little bit, but that being as thin as it is and that being as thick as it is, I think that's going to bend and sort of hold itself exactly where it wants to be before it pulls anything out of alignment. Plus all this stuff's got like a ton of adjustment in it, so I don't think it'll be too much of a drama. Now I need to get that at least to go up on there, and then a bit of other linkage needs to go in, but we will carry on. I think I need to put the stick in now. So just like everything with this kit, Fitting the stick is a two-person job because it drops down from the top but bolts in from the bottom. And to put that in, I sort of figured, well, I'll put the bottom bar in because it actually attaches to that home joint that we put in there, runs through, and that'll stop the stick from falling all the way through the hole. And then I'm like, okay, well, to put that bar in, it needs to mount up on the transmission somewhere. And funnily enough, one of the last instructions in here is to take this arm off, which I've been struggling with working around the whole time. So yeah, take that off before you even start because it's really in the bloody way. There's a roll pin there that you got to try and knock out. How are you gonna do that in the car? I don't know. I guess we'll work it out. Okay, finally got that piece off. It's this piece here had the roll pin in it. I changed it into a gear. I don't know what gear it was, but it's sort of got that pin sort of aligned better that I could hit it from the top. My 5.5mm pin punch got bent following an argument about subframe alignment or something like that. So I used a 4.8, which was probably a little bit small. It was kind of probably mushrooming the roll pin out more and making it harder to get out, but whatever, I don't know. It took a lot to get that out of there, and I cut myself quite bad on some of this wiring stuff. So it's actually the next day because I was quite mad. Now, I need to somehow put this piece in, which means I need to somehow put that on that end while simultaneously putting that end up under the car on the shifter. So I think some dismantling might take place, and I'll put this bit on first. Contrary to instructions, I'm going to do it this way because I tried the other way and it didn't work. Okay, I don't know what you can see down there, but I did get that bad boy on. I don't know if my roll pin's factory or not, but I really struggled to get that in. I struggled to get it out as well, obviously. I actually ended up having to take this piece out, put it in the vise and start the roll pin in it, then put it on and basically align this with a pin punch and force it through from this side. And I galled the end of the pin severely trying to punch it in there. I was really having to hammer it hard. So I don't know, but it is on there nice and firm. Now this guy here will actually drop down in the transmission with the top piece not on. So just be careful when you try and push this black piece on, that pin just drops into the transmission. You sort of got to try and fish it back out again. So be careful of that. And if you can't line your roll pin holes up, it means that this here is not quite in alignment. So I just used a pair of pliers and pulled up and sort of twisted it a little bit till it clicked up all the way. And make sure that you maintain your alignment on that hole, because obviously it can probably index in different places. So I have a feeling that mine actually might be slightly off. Just looking at my location here where the differential is there, and I'm sort of pointing it that way, whereas in the photo here the differential is there and it's pointing that way. So I am going to double check that before I go too much further. And then I also do have that bottom shaft in, and that was Struggle City. In this picture here it doesn't show any power steering lines. I don't know if it's a difference between Australian delivered and UK delivered cars, but mine actually has two power steering lines that sort of wrap up and around here, and that bar there actually has that piece welded on, and actually had to go sort of through it, but I couldn't get the angle because it was hitting the floor. Yeah, so I had to like bend power steering lines really badly, and I had to bend the heat shield and that to try and jam that bar in there, and I had to like hammer it in there. It was extremely difficult, and now it's actually hitting the heat shield of the exhaust, and it needs to go into that hole. So I need to take a good 30mm out, and I do have that in adjustment in the rod, but I sort of presumed that these rods were kind of half set to their length already, so I might just have to bend the heat shield to get it over that last little bit or something. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, I have mocked up the shifter and everything goes together, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put that little gland condom thing on here. I'm going to bolt that up finally, since I know where the rod lands now, and then I can reassemble everything and start adjusting. Let's do it. All right, so I unwrapped another transmission, and it's a bit hard to tell, but that roll pin sits there, and we'll say it's like, you know, a few millimeters off where that web joins on that orientation there, which is about where mine is. But if you ask me, it needs to be around a lot further. So that's about where my roll pin is, a few mil off of that. But that bar it's pointing down that direction there, and I feel it should be pointing sort of down there like 90 degrees to this arm, because what that's going to do is to go one way, it wants to pull it, you know, around there, and then to go the other way, it's pushing it more towards 90. So it's going to be a longer throw one side to the other, which might not be a big deal. This bar here is connected to the shifter directly. So what I'll do is I'll put the shifter in the car and get it sitting up 90 degrees. That'll tell me where this bar is going to end, and then I'm just going to have to shorten it to go to there and hope that it doesn't affect anything. If you ask me, on their directions, that's way more of a 90 degree angle than what I'm going to get down there, which is going to be sort of maybe a 70 degree angle. So I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but I'm going to carry on. So as I said, my next bit is to put this on here. I think these are M5 bolts, so I'll drill a 6mm hole. I've got plenty of play. That's going to be under the car. Can't really show you that, so get under there and do it. Missus gave me a $200 bottle of wine to put in the ragu, and then I realised it was a $200 bottle of wine. So it's a race between finishing the ragu and finishing the wine and finishing this. So this could get sloppy. Let's do it. All right, so quick update. I realised that power steering line that was in my way wasn't actually supposed to be there. There's a clip on the front of the subframe that it had come out of and was tangled up. So that was my stupid. So I've taken that rod out again, and I've put the power steering line back where it needs to be, so it's well out of my way now. I've also put a couple of nicks in that heat shield on the exhaust, because it sort of had a flange that stuck out, so I've cut that, bent the flange down, and then just sort of hammered it away because it was really in my way. So I've made a bit of clearance there for that vertical rod. That Heim joint that comes out does have a bit of play in it, so I had already adjusted that out as far as I was comfortable, and it was still hitting. So I've bent that away now, so I can put that Heim joint back in a little bit further, make it a little bit more stable. Yeah, so back to reassembly. All right, just another note before I pack it up for the night and finish adjusting this in the morning. I just thought I'd show you what I was trying to explain in the car, which is quite difficult about this pin here. Now, he's floating, and this is the factory arm that comes off it, which usually sits that way like that. The arm you're putting on sits back this way. Now, this guy here drops down into the transmission. You've got to be quite careful that you don't actually push it down fully inside. And then when you're trying to put the arm on it, it's quite difficult. Obviously, you need to push down. It's got this little spring on top too. I found sort of twisting the arm on helps, but once you start to compress that spring, you've got to put force on it. And if there's too much force on this bar, it pushes it down. A range of different size pins, like some really small ones, so that I could sort of get in and use it like a podgy bar to pull it back up helped. But there's a couple of different positions that this pin indexes in, and only one of them will allow this arm to go in and out. So when you turn it, it actually moves that arm in and out. So in and that way is out. If you've got it in the right spot, it'll go both ways. It'll go in and out. But when you push it down, you can actually turn it quite a bit and it does nothing. And you can pull it back up and it'll index in a different spot. If it's in the wrong spot, it won't go both ways. So let's see if I can find a different spot for you. Maybe that one, let's try that one. Yeah, see, that one won't go that way now. It's completely seized. It goes in, but won't go out. So we need to go the other way a little bit. So we go down. That doesn't move at all. I don't know what I've hit there. But anyway, that's my point. Just keep fiddling around with this thing. That feels better. Yep, there we go. Just keep fiddling around with that thing until you get that arm moving both ways. And then before you fully commit to punching the roll pin back in, make sure you got it in the right spot. Otherwise, you'll hate yourself because you've actually got to push it down in the transmission to index it correctly. So the roll pin's about 6.5 mil. So a 6.5 mil drill bit will work well as an index if you don't have a 6.5 mil pin punch. For actually punching the roll pin out, a 5.5 works better than the 6.5. 6.5 works well to get it started, but yeah, you really, you know, if you just a hair off with your pin punch and you try and hit it, you'll just mushroom the end of it and gall the end of your shaft, and you won't actually get it out. So where are you going? Bye, stupid gimbal. Quick update. I've mock assembled everything. Over and back works fine. I can't even feel that it's hitting the heat shields. I don't know if it actually is or not. Forward and back on the lever was extremely stiff. I was actually hitting top and bottom of that hole on this. I've just removed the shift rod and you can see it's hitting there and there. It was extremely tight, so that hole's in the right spot. It possibly could be this way a little bit more, a few mil. It wasn't quite centralized in the hole, but it needs to be like that way more, or the rod needs to go up. And there is an adjustment on the rod, like, because that's angled like that. If I adjust it, it will tilt the rod up a little bit, but it also will shorten it, and I'm sort of out on this adjustment. I don't want to do that anymore, so I don't see any harm in opening that hole up. I've got a 50 mil, if you can see it, I've got a 50 mil hole saw here, and it's about the same size as that hole, and the grommet is way bigger than 50 mil, so I've got, you know, it'll still seal perfectly, and I just think it'll, you know, just make things a lot easier. So whether you need to do this or not, I'm not 100% sure. Yours might just work. Mine doesn't. I could probably just ream that hole top and bottom a little bit just to elongate it, but this is just as easy. I've just screwed a block of wood up underneath just to hold the arbor so that I don't have it walking around on me. And I'm just going to smash this through because I'm a crazy boy. So let's do it. All right, so drilled the 50 mil hole there, and even that's still kind of tight. I don't know how well you can see there. There's a bit of room to the top, but it pulls that gasket in, and underneath there's a couple of mil, 3 or 4 mil. I ended up just sort of from underneath just giving that top edge just a bit of a bump up, and the bottom just a bit of a bump down, just to give me a bit more clearance. And it feels pretty good now. So I've tightened everything up. Adjustment was actually really easy. Everything just kind of like was already pre-adjusted fairly well and fell into place. I did sort of want to move the shifter forward a little bit in the hole. It's not actually hitting, but it does get close to the back here when you shift gears, but that's actually not something that's adjustable, funnily enough. So anyway, that point there is as low as it could possibly go to try and give me as much clearance at the top here as I could. Yeah, the other ones, as I said, I had to cut down this shaft here. I had to cut it, and I just sort of measured, had the stick vertical inside, and then just kind of eyeballed measurement on here. There's a fair bit of engagement in there, so I was able to measure it, cut it, and then I just screwed the ends on the rod until it dropped into place. Everything else was kind of already set up, so I did all the locks up, put all the little lock pins back in. Everything's reassembled now. I haven't put the exhaust back on, but that was a much bigger job than I thought. People have said that it's extremely difficult, and I sort of figured, but things that I didn't actually expect were the hard parts of the job. Just access. There's in 90% of the linkages in there, you can't actually get a tool on properly. Like even that little lock nut down there, like it's a 13 mil, and you can't actually swing a spanner on it. The bolt underneath, it's under the exhaust, you can't get an Allen key on it properly. The bolt up underneath, once it's inside the tunnel, you can't get an Allen key on that either. I had to hold it with vice grips and that. So I ended up using pretty much every tool in the arsenal, and they're all still lying around everywhere because it was a bit of a frustrating old job. But anyway, it is in. It feels great. It's really shortened the throw up. We'll jump in and we'll have a bit of a look. It'd be good to get this car outside and give it a wash, but yeah, it's an extremely short throw now, and all the gears are there. They feel great. So reverse. So yeah, race car parts. Excellent. Budget about 5 hours to to put this in. You might be able to smash it in no time at all. You might have less dramas than me. Yeah, you might have more dramas than me. You will need a hole saw. I would probably recommend going with the 50mm. You will need Allen keys of all different sorts. So, for instance, I think there's 8 and 5, and I think there's another smaller one. I can't remember exactly what it is. I used all of them in both Allen key form and in on a ratchet form. Obviously, just an entourage of spanners as well. Pin punch is a must, and probably the thing that I used the most was this punch extension, which is just a long piece of rod, and I ended up actually taping the 5.5mm punch on the end, because getting that roll pin out, I had to hit it from out here, because the angle that you want to hit from, you're actually hitting all this nonsense here, so that I was able to get an angle that I could hit from. So, and I use that quite a bit actually. So, but yeah, I'd probably rank it probably a 9 out of 10 difficulty scale. It is very difficult. It's, you know, especially if you want to get it right, you could probably sort of wing a few of the things. But yeah, binding is an issue, obviously, and I didn't really want that, so I took my time with it, made sure that everything sort of lined up, and I assembled and disassembled things several times, put it in, made sure things kind of lined up before I locked them in place, and made a mistake that was, well, not irreversible, but before I made things more of a pain in the ass for myself. So anyway, that is in. One other thing that I learnt, which I'm always learning about these things, they were made over a very long period of time in a lot of different places around the world. This is the arm that came off of the gearbox out of Pierre, and this is the one that I'm used to, and it's the one that's on there with that roll pin. But this gearbox here came out of Dick's, the silver car outside, and it's got that arm on it. And while they're not hugely different, it does actually have a different pivot point for the shifter. So I have not seen that before, and I'm guessing, I think there's BE4 and BE4R transmission, so maybe that's the difference. I'm not 100% sure, but I would guess also that this part here is also different between the two, because yeah, I would assume with that pivot point being different that this point here would also be higher / lower. So I don't know where my other linkage holder is off this transmission. Actually, maybe is this down here? Oh, look, I found it. Ask and ye shall receive. So yeah, they are different. Look at that, very different. So this one's got this plastic little doohickey on it. This is the one that I'm used to. I've worked with this one a lot in a couple of different gearboxes. I have not seen this one. I do not know what it is. I think this is an 04 car. I think this one might be an 05, so that may be the difference. But anyway, yeah, always learning. There are a lot of differences in these things, but a lot of things are pretty universal, and you know, you can make things work. But anyway, I've yabbed enough. You're sick of me. That's how you put a SatchShift in. Good luck with yours.